Sharing the Spirit, Channel 10, KTVL, Medford.
This is News Center 10, prepared each day by Southern Oregon and Northern California's largest television news staff, and reported tonight by Terry Miller, with Hank Henry, George Warren's California Report, Tom McLeod Sports, and from Chicago, Paul Harvey. News Center 10 continues in a moment. This is KTVL, Medford, Oregon. This is News Center 10, prepared each day by Southern Oregon and Northern California's largest television news staff, and reported tonight by Terry Miller, with Leon Hunsaker and the weather, and political commentary by Russell Sadler. Here now is Terry Miller.
Good evening, and in the news tonight, a Napa, Idaho realtor has been named general.
This is KTVL, Medford, Oregon. This is News Center 10, prepared each day by Southern Oregon and Northern California's largest television news staff, and reported tonight by George Warren, with John Gallos in sports, Bryn Hazel and the weather, and political commentary by Russell Sadler.
Good evening. No sooner had Klamath National Forest firefighters begun to...
George will meet you there in 15 minutes.
Unit 3 clear. Now, News Center 10, prepared each day by Southern Oregon and Northern California's largest television news staff, and reported tonight by Terry Miller, with George Warren, sports with Tom McLeod, weather with Bryn Hazel, and The View from Here with Hank Henry.
Good evening, and in the news tonight, firefighters late this afternoon controlled the Colstein fire, which was burning up the...
Good morning. Oregon State Governor Vic Atiyeh is here this morning. We wanted to share a little bit of information about...
You're watching KTVL News 10, where your local news begins now, making a difference for Southern Oregon and Northern California. This is News 10 at 6.
31 years ago today, the Supreme Court legalized abortion with its Roe versus Wade ruling. But tonight, the debate goes on. Good evening, I'm Michael Thornycroft.
And I'm Libby Dowsett. We'll have more on this story in just a minute, but first, some breaking news tonight. One driver is dead after an...
You're watching KTVL News 10, where your local news begins now, with coverage you can count on in Southern Oregon and Northern California. This is News 10 at 6 a.m.
Good morning. At 6 o'clock on this Thursday, January 8th, 2009. I'm Trish Glose. Thanks for waking up with us this morning. Here's a look at our top stories today.
You're watching KTVL News 10, where your local news begins now, with coverage you can count on in Southern Oregon and Northern California. This is News 10 at noon.
Our top story today, President-elect Barack Obama made his biggest pitch yet for his economic stimulus plan. Good afternoon, I'm Trish Glose. Thanks for joining us on this Thursday.
Coming up next, Josephine County approves hundreds of thousands of dollars for the sheriff's office. We'll show you what that money will buy. Plus, Oregon State Police detonated a suspicious device in Grants Pass. Turns out it was not a bomb. We'll show you what it was. And Interstate 5 is back open in Washington State after flooding closed the freeway for 2 days. News 10 at 5 is next.
We're watching KTVL News 10, where your local news begins now, with coverage you can count on in Southern Oregon and Northern California. This is News 10 at 5.
Our top story tonight, after a passionate debate, Josephine County Commissioners vote to increase funding for the Sheriff's Office. Good evening, I'm Shannon Young. Thanks for joining us tonight.
With coverage you can count on, this is News 10 at 5 with Shannon Young and your Weather First forecast with Kevin Lawless. You're watching KTVL News 10, where your local news begins now. With coverage you can count on in Southern Oregon and Northern California. This is News 10 at 6.
Our top story tonight, citations are issued as a new texting ban goes into effect for California drivers. Good evening, I'm Shannon Young. Thanks for joining us tonight. Next at 11, Oregon State Police beef up Southern Oregon patrols. Plus, the Josephine County Sheriff's Department will get increased funding, but there is a catch, and Medford's new airport terminal opens for business this weekend. News 10 at 11, and Friday night fast breaks are next.
You're watching KTVL News 10, where your local news begins now. With coverage you can count on in Southern Oregon and Northern California. This is News 10 at 11.
Our top story tonight, for the first time in 6 years, Oregon State Police are patrolling Southern Oregon highways for 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Good evening, I'm Shannon Young. Thanks for joining us tonight.
Set up for the potential of a major, wildfire situation.
Fire and forestry experts are preparing for a very busy season. Then taking your pets on road trips can be fun, but leaving them in a hot car is dangerous and illegal. Plus, remember the fiscal cliff? We could soon be facing the dairy cliff. Milk prices are about to rise. News 10 at 6 starts now.
You're watching News 10, where your local news begins now. Your connection in Southern Oregon and Northern California. This is News 10 at 6.
Good evening, I'm Rick Tillery. Thanks for joining us. Trish has the night off. A 5-year-old girl is dead after being shot last night in Grants Pass.
We are actually getting quite fed up with this guy.
Another arson case from Medford Police. News 10 at 11 begins now.
You're watching News 10, where your local news begins now. Your connection in Southern Oregon and Northern California. This is News 10 at 11.
Good evening, I'm Trish Close. Thanks for joining us. Rick is off tonight. Medford Police are on the hunt for a serial arsonist.
In Southern Oregon and Northern California, this is News 10 Good Morning.
Today on News 10 Good Morning, a major moment in the war on terror. President Trump announces the death of an ISIS leader.
I'm James Rosen on Capitol Hill with the mixed reception that President Trump's triumph against ISIS is receiving from House and Senate Democrats, including those who are running for president.
Plus, Congresswoman Katie Hill announces resignation amid allegations of improper relationships with staffers. And a former Michigan representative has passed away. His life remembered and his accomplishments. It's 5 a.m. Welcome to News 10 Good Morning. I'm Brittany Spears. Today is Monday, October 28th. Thank you so much for...
You're watching News 10, your connection in Southern Oregon and Northern California. This is News 10 at 6.
Good evening, I'm Trish Close.
I'm Dave DeRorange. Thanks for joining us. On Track bought a low-income housing...
You're watching News 10, your connection in Southern Oregon and Northern California. This is News 10 Weekend.
Good evening, I'm Serena Sandoval.
And I'm Will Metzold. Thanks for joining us. Crews continue to battle the growing Bybee fire at Crater Lake.
In Southern Oregon and Northern California, this is News 10 at 11.
Good evening, I'm Brian Schnee. Thank you for joining us. The daughter of the missing Merlin man is grieving after a body inside of...
You're watching News 10, your connection in Southern Oregon and Northern California. This is News 10 Weekend.
Good evening, I'm Jessica Danova. Thanks for joining us. 3 Americans, a Frenchman, a British...
Live in Southern Oregon and Northern California, this is News 10 at noon.
Good afternoon, I'm Brittany Spears. Thanks for joining us. We are expecting another heated week in Washington.
This is News 10 at 5.
Ashland was the only city that voted no on the new jail proposal earlier this year. Now the Jackson County Sheriff hopes to change that. Good evening, I'm Trish Close. Thank you for joining us tonight. Continuing the effort on the new 800...
Live in Southern Oregon and Northern California. This is News 10 at 6.
Good evening, I'm Trish Close. Thank you for joining us tonight. A $4 million project is underway to...
Live in Southern Oregon and Northern California. This is News 10 at 11.
Good evening, I'm Genevieve Fong. Thanks for joining us. Continuing coverage of the new 800.
Live in Southern Oregon and Northern California, this is News 10 Weekend at 11.
Good evening, I'm Marisa Lee. Thank you for joining us. Last night,
This is Channel 10, KTVL Medford.